I started out in trying to find out what was wrong with me, kind of actually since I was 16 years old, because when I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed with hypertension. And 15-year-olds just don't have high blood pressure. So this is really bad, because if you have like high blood pressure at 15 and it's not controlled, then what's going to happen by the time you're 20 and 30 and 40, many of your organs could like wear out and you're not going to be able to survive. Your heart will get enlarged, you can get congestive heart failure, your kidneys will blow out, you could have a heart attack. I mean, I deal with this in my patients now, but they're like 50, 60, and 70. They're not 15 years old. So it was pretty serious. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. At that time, my parents took me to New York City. We lived near New York City. I went to this place called Babies Hospital, which was like probably the biggest one for cardiology in the country. I went through every test. They shot dye in my kidneys, make sure there wasn't any growths in my kidneys. They put me on the treadmill, you name it, EKG. But remember, this is back in the 70s where medicine wasn't that advanced yet. So basically everything was ruled out, and I had what do they call it? It was benign hypertension. Basically, we don't know what's wrong with you, but it's not anything that's going to kill you right away, at least. They don't tell you that. But and it's interesting because my lifestyle was pretty healthy back then, like 15, 16, 17. But I'd gone to Finland, actually. When I turned 16 years old, my parents left and, well, we went on sabbatical leave. My father was a professor. So I lived in Finland for 1 year. And I learned how to drink in Finland, drink alcohol. So I drank like a lot of vodka, and I started partying at a very young age. And that, that just stuck with me for a while, and I kept doing that over the years. And the problem with that was it kept raising the pressure up. But it wasn't just that. It was a lot of, I got into the restaurant business when I was already working in the restaurant business like 15, 16 years old, like under the table. And we were like washing dishes and they give us beers, It was fun. And it was in the Italian restaurant in Princeton. So at a very young age, I didn't have to do any of this. I mean, I didn't need to work, but I mean, as a little kid, you want to have extra money, buy your Adidas sneakers. And I played a lot of sports too. I played lacrosse and basketball in high school. But little by little, this kind of lifestyle, the stress, and then the restaurant business was creeping up on me little by little. So by the time I turned like 26, 27, 28, and I'd been in many different dining rooms, I'd gone through management trainee programs that were like boot camp, literally in the restaurant business. The ones I went through was like being in boot camp. It was very hard, working 80, 90 hours a week. You work as hard as you party. Everybody's the same. You think that's the world. Okay, this is the world. I'm going to do what everybody else is doing. And these are just the insane people in the restaurant business. So, but when I was young, that was my path, so this has all been my path. And I want to say something now. This path sounds kind of crazy and everything, but it got me to where I am now, which is amazing. So it's a beautiful stepping stone from that stress and all the pathology and all those states to get to where I am now. Because it came time when I went to Atkins in New York City, and my mom was a big proponent on natural medicine even back then, and Atkins wanted me on like 27 different supplements. And we call that shotgun now. But it pretty works. It depends. It can work. And what happened was I would take all these supplements and it would lower my blood pressure. But as soon as I did anything like drink a cup of coffee or have something like stimulant or anything, and remember, I'm pretty young at this age. What, my life's over? Like I can't do this anymore? So I would take the supplements and then do whatever I wanted to do, which wasn't very good and wasn't conducive to what he was trying to explain to me. And I know I try to help my patients see that now, but back then I was too young. So by going to Atkins, I remember one time very clearly, the MDs then, the doctors I was going to, there wasn't any NDs, there's MDs. They said, you'll be on this blood pressure medicine for the rest of your life. Well, they didn't tell me I was going to be on more than 1, 2, or even 3 of them later on when I got into more stressful lifestyle, and that they aren't going to work anymore. I mean, they didn't know that. So the problem with that was, well, it started to happen when I got older and I had to figure out what to do. But when I went to Atkins in New York, I saw a guy in the back of the medicinary, the pharmacy, and he was filling all the prescriptions for me. And he was like a big buff guy, muscle bound, maybe like 25 years old. I was a little younger, and I was like emaciated. I was stressed in the restaurant business. I was always skinny. They called me Big Bird in high school, which I hated. So I was very like 6'2", 175 pounds. I couldn't gain an ounce of weight, and I was a sickly child. I would get sick all the time. And it was interesting because when I saw that guy in the back of the counter, I said, you know what? I want to be like that. I'm going to be like that. And there's some way. He's working here. He must have gone through something like I went through, and now he's working here. That's just the message I got in my brain, which is that's a good thought. I had a lot of bad thoughts, but this is a good one. So I basically said, that's what's going to happen. And then I said, I'm also going to get off this blood pressure medicine. I'm not going to be on this. I don't care what anybody says. And that was the beginning, going to Atkins, seeing all the different nutraceuticals, because that's similar to what naturopaths do, but it's only maybe 10%. We do a lot more than just nutraceuticals, but back in the day, that's what they had. And so there was, I guess you can quote, natural medicine or holistic medicine with very special people, and Atkins was one of them. So after that, kind of my life went on, and I burned out at like 30. I had a really hard burnout. I could almost not work. I was shell-shocked. I didn't want to go in any more dining rooms because the dining room was very stressful, and I've been doing that for 10, 15 years, and really super high-end. I was lucky enough I got to go to France and Switzerland to work. So, meanwhile I have these problems, I'm still doing really cool stuff, and I'm learning a lot of things. I learned an amazing amount about foods, like 2, 3, 4-star restaurants, Michelin guide restaurants. I ate at them. My parents took us to Europe. They wanted to make sure we knew everything about etiquette and lifestyle, the high-end life. But I have to say we weren't rich, but we were rich in learning and wisdom and how other cultures lived, and that's what my parents wanted to explain to us. They were Ivy League academics, and they were very diverse in their lives and what they knew and their knowledge. So they wanted to impart that to us. So we went to go to Europe. We took a Volkswagen bus. We lived in Finland for a year. We took a Volkswagen bus all the way back to Le Havre in France, on the west coast of France. One summer we toured everywhere, and every city there was a different restaurant. They were into food. They're foodies. Or maybe they didn't know it, but they were going to know it later on, and they love good food. So that's what I learned. So of course you have that kind of background and atmosphere. That's what I went into in school. So I did 2 years in a school in New York City. It was New York City Tech then. It was very similar to CIA, Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, and we used to have competitions with them every year at the hotel show, and we would win a lot of them. Beautiful pulled sugar baskets and garde-manger work. Super nice stuff, really high end. And so that's what I did for 2.5 years. I went there. I got the connections in New York City, all the Italian guys. I started working in New York, went to the Parker Meridian. And it's a funny story because I used to walk to the Parker Meridian going to the graveyard shift, and I was going to work at 10, and I was getting off at 6, 5 days a week, right? And so I'd walk by Studio 54, the heyday of Studio 54. It was the biggest disco, probably in the world, and I would walk by there in my pinstriped suit, my little porky tie, and my briefcase, going to work. And I'm looking there, and I see all the crazy people shouting and screaming, have a good time. And after about a couple months, and I'm like, wait, what's wrong with this picture? Because I wasn't even I was in my 20s then, my early 20s. Because I had gone right from high school to the school in New York City for culinary arts and hotel restaurant management. Well, meanwhile, I was getting more and more burned out. I'd go out every night. I had to be with the who's who. I wanted to make it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it big. And one thing was I used to tell the universe, or I would tell God, how I'm going to do it. This is my life, and I'm going to do it this way, and nothing can stop me. Well, you know how that works, at least if you had any kind of changes in your life and you had times that weren't so easy and so hard, you start to search. And my health was getting really bad. So by the time I was 30, I was literally on the couch sometimes in my house looking outside at the kids outside playing, wondering if I'm ever going to be able to do that again. Literally, this is what was starting to happen to me. And even if I watched a scary movie or even the news, my heart started freaking out and going all over the place just from that little bit of stress, because the TV has energy. And I was at such a level that I couldn't even take that. So I was getting to be an environmental case, as I call my patients, the patients that any of them, they know this right away. If they go to Macy's, the perfume aisle, if they go anywhere in little they'll pass out. Just from those perfumes because their body is so, it's your immune system and your hormones. I know what it is now, and I treat those patients. So little by little, I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I had no idea, and I was getting more and more depressed, and I knew I couldn't work in restaurant business. So both my parents were like, okay, go back to school. That was always there. Anything happens, just go back to school. You're fine. So I did. I finally went back to school. And it's interesting because about 10 years later, I cleaned up my lifestyle. I started doing better. I went to school, but I still had a lot of health problems. And then I found a meditation called Falun Gong. And I started practicing that when I turned just about 31, I started practicing, and that really helped my life a lot. And then within 3 or 4 months, my blood pressure went normal, and then even my ADD and my dyslexia somewhat fixed. I was very ADD too. I used to have to drink a lot of caffeine just to be able to do work. And so it was a good time in my life that I started to realize also. I started reading books like Carolyn Myss, Wayne Dyer, things that were kind of spiritual in nature. They're not God-based necessarily, which I don't have any problem with that now, but back then I was like, well, I don't know if I want to take the plunge into Christianity or anything like that, but I knew there was a part of me that needed that side, and I didn't have it at all. I was completely void of that. So I was like a new student. I didn't know anything, which was cool. So when I started practicing Falun Gong and the scriptures I read and the exercises and what I felt, because I was very sensitive, and I felt peace in my life for the first time ever, like a deep peace. And I knew it. I knew it. This is the practice for me. I'll never stop this practice. And then I've done it now almost 20 years. So I can definitely attest to those early days lying on the couch looking out the window to now being in front of a camera. There's no way I could ever thought of even doing that. Because I couldn't public speak. I was so fearful. In the beginning, I was so scared of everything. And it took years to get rid of that. And maybe that was all the years partying and going all these clubbing and all that crazy stuff. It took a lot out of me. I had to heal and I had to detox from all that stuff. It took a long time.